I am from Kansas. And I know a lot of you know that. And you know, being from Kansas is kind of an okay place to be from. It's a pretty benign state. We did have that little kerfuffle back in 1859 and 1860 called the American Civil War, where every newspaper in the country referred to Kansas as Bloody Kansas. But after 1865, that all ironed itself out, didn't it? After that, it was just like Little House on the Prairie on a 24/7 loop on TV land. That is until 1939, when a certain movie came out, changing forever what it meant to be from Kansas. Now, for those of you who are movie buffs, I am not talking about, thanks for the clue, I'm not talking about Gone with the Wind. I'm not talking about Gunga Din. I'm not talking about Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. All fine movies. But they all seem to get lost because of that movie, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Oh, ever since that movie came out, being from Kansas has been miserable. It doesn't matter who I tell I started out in Kansas. They have to make some reference to that movie. We're going to start with the obvious. I could be in downtown Toledo, in the mayor's office in Toledo, Ohio, and some staff member, when they find out from Kansas, is going to look at me and say, "So, you're not in Kansas anymore." Duh. They don't have maps here in Ohio. You know, Ohio, Kansas, about 800 miles in between. Trust me, I know. I've driven it. Then there's the cutesy. How's Dorothy? Dorothy? Deceased. I know that's a little dark for this early in the morning. But still, how's Dorothy? Then there's the pet lover. Do you think Toto was as adorable in real life as he was on camera? Toto? That little mongrel mutt? Adorable? Where'd they find that dog? Probably digging through the trash on the back lot somewhere. Along comes the set decorator and says, "I've got this idea. Let's put that little mutt in a basket and make Judy Garland carry it the whole movie. It'll add authenticity." Oh, Toto. Then there's the musical. This is my favorite because I'm a musician. We represent, sorry, the Lollipop Guild. Really? Munchkin jokes? You know they always fall short. Finally, there's the theatrical. Somebody always has to pull out their best Wicked Witch of the West, right? They have to do the cackle, or they have to do, "I'm melting. I'll get you, my pretty. And you're like a dog, too." Right? I didn't do that too bad, did I? Maybe I should paint myself green for Halloween. Anyway, Margaret Hamilton was an amazing actress, wasn't she? She started that role in her mid-30s. She'd already been an actress for a long time, just kind of a contract actress. She went on to perform steadily into her late 70s. She toured in a musical for 51 weeks, kind of a not a very popular musical called A Little Night Music, for 51 weeks straight in her mid-70s. Touring shows are tough. She went on to do that musical, and they say that oftentimes she would get in a smaller town when she was touring, and she would just walk on stage, and people would just spontaneously stand up and start clapping. Imagine that. Just people would give you applause just for walking on stage. She was so beloved. They said oftentimes it broke up the show. She had to stop and wait for people to finally just wear themselves out and sit down. Her daughter said that in the last years of her life, one of her biggest regrets was that she scared little children. She started her career as a kindergarten teacher. Isn't that interesting? Imagine that. Some of us probably had some grade school kids that were kind of, "I'll get you." Right? She said that she always regretted that she scared little kids, and she always wanted to tell them, "Hey, it's make-believe. It's just play." You know what my biggest regret in life is? That they didn't set that stupid movie in Nebraska.
Watch it.
Sorry, I should have chose Oklahoma. What was I thinking, or Iowa? Oh. I didn't go back to Kansas. I stayed here. In fact, I've lived right here in Northwest Ohio now longer than I lived in Kansas. It's interesting, isn't it? About 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to really change my geography. My marriage of 21 years had ended, and I didn't have any real ties here to Northwest Ohio. All the family that I knew were her family. The rest of my family lived in Kansas. All of the friends that I knew, or at least most of them, were her friends. So I didn't really have any ties here. But I stayed. I stayed right here, and I started writing for local publications. I formed up a music group that now plays all over town, and really all over the area, in local music venues and local art houses and coffee houses. And just about a year ago, I started a local publication that was all about local culture, local events, local happening, all about being right here. I stayed. I had a couple of sisters who wanted me to come back to Kansas, at least one of them. I even had a friend in Bradenton, Florida, who said to me, listen, you got no ties up there. Come move down to Bradenton. They were scoping out apartments. But I stayed right here. And I did so because, well, this is my home. And if there's one thing that movie taught us, there's no place like home.